throwaway account because things are about to get messy. My wife, Jenna, and I have always been the great couple. We were the envy of our friends, happy, successful, and always in sync. When my best friend Mark and his wife Lisa suggested a joint camping trip by the lake, it sounded like the perfect getaway. Tents, bonfires, and a little time away from the hustle and bustle. We set up camp near the lake, with our tents close enough for convenience but far enough for privacy. Everything seemed perfect. The air was fresh, the lake serene, and the vibe just right. But little did I know this trip would change everything. On the second night, things started to unravel. We had a big bonfire, roasted marshmallows, and shared stories until late into the night. Around midnight, Lisa decided to go for a swim, and I volunteered to gather more firewood. Jenna and Mark stayed back at the campsite, claiming they were too tired to join us. I thought nothing of it at the time. As I ventured deeper into the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I dismissed it, blaming it on the eeriness of the forest at night. I collected a decent amount of wood and headed back to the camp. When I returned, Lisa was still swimming, but Jenna and Mark were nowhere to be seen. I dropped the firewood near the pit and quietly approached the tent Jenna and I shared. The closer I got, the clearer it became. Muffled sounds, whispered words, and the unmistakable noise of intimacy. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I unzipped the tent with as much composure as I could muster. There they were, Jenna and Mark, tangled up in the mess they created. They froze, eyes wide with shock. I didn't say a word, just backed out and zipped the tent shut, trapping them inside with their guilt. The rage that bubbled up inside me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I stormed over to the tent where Lisa was still obliviously enjoying her night swim. By the time she got out and approached the campsite, I was already in a heated argument with Mark, who had finally emerged, trying to explain away the inexcusable. Lisa stood there, dripping wet, utterly confused. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice trembling. I paused, looking between Mark, Jenna, and Lisa. "We had a disagreement over my cheating wife," I spat out. "You didn't know your husband was sleeping with her?" Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief, and then, in a blur, she lunged at Jenna, who had just stumbled out of the tent. She grabbed Jenna by the hair, and the scene turned into a chaotic mess of screaming and physical confrontation. My mind was reeling. This woman, the love of my life, had betrayed me with my best friend. And now, in the middle of this picturesque campsite, everything was falling apart. Jenna was screaming, trying to break free from Lisa's grip, while Mark and I stood there, unsure of how to intervene without making things worse. Finally, I managed to pull Lisa away, but not before she landed a few solid slaps on Jenna's face. The rage in Lisa's eyes mirrored the turmoil I felt inside. "You lying bitch!" Lisa yelled, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to me, to us?" Jenna was crying too, her eyes pleading with me. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness," she stammered. "It didn't mean anything." Mark, ever the smooth talker, tried to chime in. "Everyone calm down. Let's talk about this rationally." "Rationally?" I exploded, turning on him. "You were screwing my wife in our tent. How the hell do you expect me to be rational?" Jenna tried to reach out to me, but I recoiled. "Don't," I said coldly. "Don't you dare touch me." The night was filled with tension. We all sat around the dying fire, trying to process what had just happened. Lisa sat across from me, her eyes never leaving Jenna, who was beside me, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen her. Mark was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair, clearly at a loss for words. "I can't believe this," Lisa finally said, breaking the silence. "How long has this been going on?" "It was just this once," Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I swear, it meant nothing." But I knew Jenna too well. She was a master of manipulation, always had been. I could see through her lies, and I wasn't buying it. Lisa seemed to be struggling with the same thoughts. "And I'm supposed to believe that?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "After what I just saw?" Mark stopped pacing and faced Lisa. "It was a mistake, Lisa. We were drunk and things just happened. It won't happen again." I scoffed. Drunk? That's your excuse? You think being drunk justifies this? Jenna looked at me, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, babe. Please, give me a chance to make it right. But I couldn't. The betrayal cut too deep. Make it right? I repeated. How do you plan to do that? You can't just undo what's been done. The rest of the night was a blur of accusations, apologies, and promises that seemed hollow. None of us got any sleep. Lisa stayed with me in my tent, while Mark and Jenna were left to face the reality of their actions in the other. Morning came too soon, and with it, a heavy silence. We all packed up our things, the atmosphere tense and awkward. The drive home was a quiet one, each of us lost in our thoughts, the weight of the situation settling in. When we finally arrived back in town, we went our separate ways. Lisa came with me to our house, still too shocked to face Mark alone. Jenna tried to come home with me, but I stopped her at the door. No, I said firmly. You need to find somewhere else to stay. I can't look at you right now. Jenna's face crumpled, but she nodded and walked away, leaving me to face the wreckage of our life together. Inside, Lisa broke down, sobbing uncontrollably on the couch. I sat beside her, feeling just as lost and broken. What do we do now? She asked between sobs. I don't know, I admitted. But one thing's for sure. Things will never be the same. The days that followed were surreal. Lisa and I became reluctant roommates, united by our mutual betrayal. We talked for hours, trying to make sense of what had happened, but there were no easy answers. Jenna called and texted constantly, begging for forgiveness, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I felt hollow, like a shell of the man I used to be. Work was a blur, and my friends noticed the change, but I brushed off their concerns, not ready to talk about it. One evening, Lisa and I sat on the porch, nursing beers and watching the sunset. It was quiet, almost peaceful, but the weight of everything hung between us. Do you think they're still seeing each other? Lisa asked, breaking the silence. I took a long sip of my beer, contemplating. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past them. Lisa sighed. I never thought Mark would do something like this. I mean, he's always been a bit of a flirt, but I trusted him. I know what you mean, I said, feeling a pang of empathy. Jenna was always good at lying, though. Looking back, there were signs. I just ignored them. We sat in silence for a while, the darkness creeping in. Finally, Lisa spoke again. I'm thinking about leaving him. I can't keep living like this, wondering if he's lying to me every time he leaves the house. I nodded. I get it. I've been thinking the same thing about Jenna. But it's hard. We built a life together. Lisa looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness. Yeah, it is hard, but maybe it's time for a fresh start. For both of us. The idea of starting over was terrifying, but staying felt impossible. I knew I had to make a decision. That night, after Lisa went to bed, I sat in the living room, staring at the walls that had once been filled with love and laughter. I made up my mind. The next morning, I called Jenna and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop. When she arrived, she looked tired and worn out, her eyes red from crying. Thanks for meeting me, she said, her voice shaky. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before I finally broke it. Jenna, I can't keep doing this, I said. I can't trust you anymore. Every time I look at you, all I see is betrayal. She started to cry, but I continued. I need space. I need time to figure out what I want, and right now I can't do that with you around. She nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. I'll give you the space you need, but please, don't give up on us. I wanted to believe her, but the wounds were too fresh. I don't know what the future holds, Jenna, but for now, I need you to stay somewhere else. She agreed, and we parted ways, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. Back home, I told Lisa about the conversation. I'm proud of you, she said. I know that wasn't easy. Thanks, I replied, feeling a small sense of relief. What about you? Have you talked to Mark? She shook her head. Not yet, but I will. I think I need to do what you did. Over the next few days, Lisa and I started to rebuild our lives. We leaned on each other for support, finding solace in our shared pain. We went out for drinks, cooked meals together, and even started jogging in the mornings. It felt good to have someone who understood, someone who was going through the same thing. One night, as we sat on the porch, Lisa turned to me. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" I sighed. "All the time, but dwelling on the past won't change anything. We have to move forward." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "You're right. Here's to moving forward." We clinked our beer bottles together, a symbol of our resolve to start anew. It wasn't going to be easy, but at least we had each other to lean on, and for the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. As weeks turned into months, Lisa and I settled into a new routine. We were still navigating the murky waters of our respective betrayals, but having each other made the journey a bit more bearable. Jenna continued to reach out, her messages varying between desperate pleas and angry accusations. I tried to stay strong, but some nights, when the loneliness was too much, I found myself reading her messages, wondering if maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to each other. But then, I'd remember the sight of her and Mark in that tent, and my resolve would harden. One evening, Lisa came home with an envelope in her hand, looking more resolute than I'd seen her in a while. "What's that?" I asked, nodding towards the envelope. "It's the divorce papers," she said, her voice steady. "I filed them today." I was taken aback by her decisiveness. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" She nodded. "I've thought about it a lot, and I know it's the right thing to do. Mark made his choice, and now I'm making mine." I admired her strength. "I'm proud of you, Lisa. You deserve better." She gave me a small smile. "Thanks. What about you? Have you thought about what you're going to do?" I had, but I was still unsure. "I don't know. It's hard to let go of everything we built together, but staying feels impossible too." Lisa sat down beside me. "You don't have to decide right away. Take your time. Just know that whatever you choose, I'll support you." Her words were comforting, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her friendship. "Thanks, Lisa. That means a lot." Over the next few days, I watched as Lisa slowly started to reclaim her life. She began going out with friends, picked up new hobbies, and even started dating again. Her resilience was inspiring, and it made me start to reevaluate my own situation. One night, after a particularly rough day at work, I came home to find Lisa cooking dinner. The aroma of spaghetti bolognese filled the air, and for a moment, I felt a sense of normalcy. "Hey," she greeted me with a smile. "I thought we could use a nice dinner." "Smells amazing," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Need any help?" "Nope, it's all under control. Just sit and relax." We sat down to eat, and as we chatted about our days, I realized how much I enjoyed these moments with her. There was no pretense, no hidden agendas, just two people finding comfort in each other's company. After dinner, we sat on the porch, sipping wine and enjoying the cool evening breeze. "Do you ever think about the future?" Lisa asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "All the time," I admitted, "but it's hard to picture it without Jenna." "I know," she said softly, "but sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward." Her words hit me hard. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to let go and start over. But the fear of the unknown was paralyzing. "I'm scared," I confessed, "of being alone, of starting over." Lisa reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone. You have me. And you're stronger than you think." Her support gave me the courage to start thinking seriously about my next steps. I decided to meet with a lawyer to discuss my options, and a few days later, I made an appointment. The meeting was eye-opening. The lawyer was straightforward, laying out the process and what to expect. It was daunting, but also strangely empowering. I realized that I had the power to take control of my life again. That night, I sat down with a pen and paper and wrote Jenna a letter. I poured out my feelings, the hurt, the anger, the sense of betrayal, but also the memories of the good times, and my hope that we could both find happiness, even if it wasn't together. I didn't send it right away. Instead, I tucked it into a drawer and slept on it. The next morning, I felt a sense of clarity. I mailed the letter and called my lawyer to start the divorce proceedings. When Lisa came home that evening, I told her what I'd done. She hugged me, and for the first time in months, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "You did the right thing," she said. "Now we can both start healing." As the days passed, I found myself growing stronger. Lisa and I continued to support each other, and our friendship deepened. We talked about our hopes and dreams, and slowly, the future didn't seem so frightening. One night, as we sat on the porch, I looked at Lisa and realized how much she meant to me. She had been my rock, my confidant, and my friend. And maybe, just maybe, she could be something more. But that was a thought for another time. For now, we had each other, and that was enough. Life started to take on a new rhythm. Lisa and I found comfort in our routines, and the wounds from our past began to slowly heal. Our evenings on the porch, filled with laughter and quiet conversations, became my favorite part of the day. One sunny Saturday morning, Lisa suggested we take a day trip to a nearby town. "It'll be good for us to get away," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. I agreed. We packed a picnic, hopped in the car, and set off. The drive was beautiful, with winding roads and scenic views. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of freedom. When we arrived, we spent the day exploring the charming streets, visiting little shops, and enjoying the local cuisine. As we sat in a quaint cafe, sipping coffee and people-watching, I realized how much I had missed moments like these. "This was a great idea," I said, smiling at Lisa. "Thanks for dragging me out here." She laughed. "You needed it. We both did." As the day turned to evening, we found a spot by the river for our picnic. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the water, and everything felt peaceful. We spread out our blanket and unpacked the food, enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Lisa asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "All the time," I admitted, "but it's starting to feel less scary." She nodded. "I feel the same way. It's strange how something so painful can lead to new possibilities." We sat in silence for a while, lost in our thoughts. Finally, I turned to her. "Lisa, I need to tell you something." She looked at me, her expression curious. "What is it?" "I've been thinking a lot about us," I began, choosing my words carefully. "About how much you mean to me. You've been my rock through all of this, and I don't think I could have gotten through it without you." She smiled softly. "You've been there for me too. We've helped each other." I took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say is, I care about you. A lot. And I think I might be falling for you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment I worried I had said too much. But then Lisa reached out and took my hand, her eyes filled with warmth. "I care about you too," she said softly. "More than I ever thought possible." We sat there, holding hands, as the sun dipped below the horizon. It felt like a new chapter was beginning, one filled with hope and possibility. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. Lisa and I took things slow, navigating the delicate transition from friends to something more. We had our doubts and insecurities, but we faced them together, always honest and open with each other. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Lisa turned to me. "I've been thinking," she said. "Maybe it's time for a fresh start, a new place, away from all the memories." I nodded, understanding what she meant. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere," she replied, "as long as we're together." We started making plans, researching towns and cities, dreaming about our future. It was exciting, the thought of building a new life together. A few weeks later, we found a charming little house in a town a few hours away. It was perfect, cozy, with a big yard and plenty of room for new memories. We packed up our things, said goodbye to the old house and all its ghosts, and moved into our new home. Life in the new town was everything we hoped it would be. We spent our days exploring, meeting new people, and slowly building a life together. Our evenings were filled with laughter and quiet moments, And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly happy. One night, as we sat on the porch, Lisa turned to me. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" I smiled, thinking back on everything we had been through. All the time, and I wouldn't change a thing. She leaned in and kissed me, and in that moment, I knew that we had found something special. We had taken the broken pieces of our past and built something beautiful. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most wonderful destinations. And with Lisa by my side, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together. Lisa and I were getting comfortable in our new life. The house was slowly becoming our home, and the town began to feel like a safe haven. We spent weekends exploring local markets, hiking trails, and hosting small get-togethers with our new friends. One lazy Sunday afternoon, we were lounging on the porch, sipping iced tea and enjoying the tranquility, when there was a knock at the door. I got up to answer it, not expecting any visitors. Standing on the porch was Mark. He looked disheveled, his face a mix of desperation and regret. I felt a surge of anger, but also a twinge of curiosity. What could he possibly want? "Hey," he said, shifting nervously. "Mark," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," he said, glancing past me to where Lisa was sitting. "It's important." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "You've got 5 minutes." Mark took a deep breath. "I'm sorry for everything. I know I messed up and I've lost everything because of it. Lisa left me and I can't seem to get my life back on track." I folded my arms, not ready to let him off the hook so easily. "What do you want from me, Mark?" He looked down, shuffling his feet. I need closure. I need to understand how you moved on, how you found happiness again." It was a strange request, but I could see the pain in his eyes. Despite everything, a part of me felt sorry for him. "It wasn't easy," I said slowly. "It took time, and a lot of it was thanks to Lisa." Mark nodded, looking over at her. "She's a good person. I'm glad you two found each other." There was a moment of silence as we both processed everything. Finally, Mark looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Can we talk? Properly?" I sighed. "All right, but not here. There's a cafe down the street. Meet me there in an hour." He nodded, grateful. "Thank you." As I watched him walk away, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to tell him to get lost, but another part understood the need for closure. I went back inside, and Lisa looked up, concern in her eyes. "What was that about?" she asked. "Mark wants to talk," I said, sitting down beside her. "He's looking for closure." She nodded slowly. "Do you think it's a good idea?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think I need it too, to finally put everything behind us." An hour later, I walked into the cafe, spotting Mark at a corner table. He looked up as I approached, a faint smile of gratitude on his face. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down. I nodded. "Let's get this over with." We talked for hours, rehashing the past, airing our grievances, and trying to make sense of it all. Mark explained how his life had spiraled out of control after the affair came to light. He'd lost Lisa, his job, and most of his friends. He was a broken man, searching for a way to rebuild his life. "I didn't realize how much I had until I lost it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I was invincible, that I could have it all, but I was wrong." I listened, feeling a strange mix of pity and satisfaction. Mark's downfall didn't erase the pain he'd caused, but it did make me realize how far I'd come. I had found a way to move on, to build a new life with Lisa, and I wasn't going to let the past drag me back. "I've forgiven you, Mark," I said finally, "but forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. You need to find a way to make peace with yourself and move forward." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "Thank you. I'll try." We parted ways, and as I walked back home, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter with Mark and Jenna was finally behind me. When I got back, Lisa was waiting on the porch, a worried look on her face. "How did it go?" she asked as I sat down beside her. It was hard, but necessary, I said, taking her hand. I feel like a weight has been lifted. She smiled, squeezing my hand. I'm proud of you. Life slowly returned to normal. We focused on the future, making plans and dreaming about what was to come. Mark's visit had been an unexpected detour, but it had also given me the closure I needed. As summer turned to fall, Lisa and I grew closer. Our bond deepened, and I realized that what we had was something special. One crisp evening, as we sat by the fire pit in our backyard, I looked at her and felt a surge of gratitude. I love you, Lisa, I said, my voice filled with emotion. She smiled, her eyes shining. I love you too. We sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the flames dance and knowing that whatever the future held, we would face it together. The seasons changed, and with them, our lives continued to evolve. Lisa and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm, our days filled with laughter, love, and a sense of purpose. We had both come a long way from the pain and betrayal of our pasts, and our future looked brighter than ever. One crisp autumn evening, as we sat on the porch wrapped in a cozy blanket, I felt a surge of emotions. It had been almost a year since we'd moved to this new town, and in that time, Lisa had become my rock, my confidant, and my best friend. I couldn't imagine my life without her. I've been thinking, I said, breaking the comfortable silence. Lisa looked at me, her eyes curious. About what? About us, about the future. She smiled, a hint of anticipation in her eyes. What about it? I took a deep breath, feeling my heart race. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Lisa. I want us to build a future together, to create new memories and grow old side by side. Her eyes widened, and she put a hand to her mouth, tears welling up. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I smiled, reaching into my pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Lisa, will you marry me? She gasped, tears streaming down her face as she nodded vigorously. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I slipped the ring onto her finger, my hands shaking with excitement and relief. We embraced, and for a moment everything else faded away. It was just us, wrapped in our love and the promise of a future together. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and planning. We decided to have a small, intimate wedding with just our closest friends and family. It felt right to keep it simple, focusing on what truly mattered, our love and commitment to each other. As the big day approached, I couldn't help but feel a mix of nerves and anticipation. I wanted everything to be perfect for Lisa, to show her just how much she meant to me. And as I stood at the altar, waiting for her to walk down the aisle, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. This was where I was meant to be. When Lisa appeared at the end of the aisle, looking radiant in her simple white dress, my heart swelled with love. She walked towards me, her eyes locked on mine, and in that moment I knew that everything we had been through had led us to this point. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and the support of our loved ones. As we exchanged rings and sealed our commitment with a kiss, I felt a sense of completeness that I had never experienced before. Lisa was my everything, and I was hers. The reception was a joyous celebration. We danced, laughed, and shared stories with our friends and family. Mark and Jenna were notably absent, but their shadows no longer loomed over us. We had moved on, and our new life was just beginning. As the night drew to a close, Lisa and I found a quiet moment alone, sitting on a bench overlooking the town. The stars were bright in the sky, and the air was filled with the scent of autumn leaves. This has been the best day of my life, Lisa said, leaning her head on my shoulder. Mine too, I replied, wrapping my arm around her, and it's just the beginning. We sat there in silence, content in each other's company. The journey that had brought us here had been filled with pain and heartache, but it had also led us to a love that was deeper and more meaningful than we could have ever imagined. As we looked out over the town that had become our home, I felt a sense of gratitude for everything we had been through. It had shaped us, strengthened us, and brought us together. And now, as we faced the future hand in hand, I knew that we could overcome anything. Here's to new beginnings, I said, raising an imaginary glass. Lisa smiled, her eyes shining with love. To new beginnings. And with that, we sealed our future with a kiss, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that as long as we had each other, we had everything we needed. The honeymoon phase was wonderful, filled with bliss and the excitement of newlywed life. We took a small trip to the coast, enjoying the serenity of the ocean and the simple pleasure of being together. Returning home, we settled back into our routine, but this time, everything felt richer, more meaningful. One evening, a few months into our marriage, I noticed Lisa seemed distracted. We were having dinner and she was picking at her food, lost in thought. "Everything okay?" I asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. She looked up, startled, as if I had pulled her from deep contemplation. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Are you sure? You seem a bit off tonight." She sighed, squeezing my hand. "I'm just a little worried about work. Things have been really stressful lately." I nodded, understanding. We both had demanding jobs, and it wasn't uncommon for the stress to seep into our personal lives. "Is there anything I can do to help?" She shook her head. "No, I just need to get through this busy period. Thanks for asking, though." I squeezed her hand again, trying to reassure her. "We'll get through it together." Over the next few weeks, Lisa continued to seem preoccupied, and I began to worry. I wanted to be supportive, but I also didn't want to pry. One night, as we lay in bed, I decided to bring it up again. "Lisa, I've noticed you've been really stressed lately. Are you sure it's just work?" She was quiet for a moment before finally speaking. "There's something else, actually. I didn't want to worry you, but I think it's time I told you." My heart raced as I prepared for the worst. "What is it?" "I've been having some health issues," she said quietly. "I've been feeling really tired and run down, and I finally went to the doctor last week. They're running some tests to see what's going on." I felt a pang of fear but tried to stay calm. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She looked down, ashamed. "I didn't want to burden you. I thought maybe it was just stress and that it would pass." "Lisa, you're never a burden," I said, pulling her into a hug. "We're in this together, remember? Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm scared, though. What if it's something serious?" "Then we'll deal with it," I said firmly. "We'll get through it, no matter what." The next few days were a blur of doctor's appointments and tests. I took time off work to be with Lisa, and we faced each appointment hand in hand. Finally, we got the results. "It looks like you have an autoimmune disorder," the doctor said, explaining the diagnosis in detail. "It's not life-threatening, but it will require ongoing treatment and lifestyle adjustments." Lisa looked relieved yet overwhelmed. "So I'm not dying?" "No," the doctor assured her, "but you will need to manage this condition carefully. We'll work together to create a treatment plan that works for you." As we left the doctor's office, I could see the weight lifting from Lisa's shoulders. We were still facing a significant challenge, but at least we had answers. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Lisa said as we drove home. "I should have trusted you." I took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "It's okay. We're a team, remember? We'll get through this together." We made adjustments to our lifestyle, incorporating healthier meals, exercise, and stress management techniques. Lisa started her treatment, and while there were tough days, we faced them together. One night, as we sat on the porch, watching the stars, Lisa turned to me. "Thank you for being my rock through all of this. I don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of love and commitment. "You do the same for me. We're in this for the long haul." Life settled into a new routine. We learned to navigate Lisa's condition, finding a balance that worked for us. It wasn't always easy, but our love grew stronger with each challenge we faced. One weekend, we decided to have a small gathering at our home to celebrate the progress we had made. We invited our new friends and neighbors, wanting to share our joy and gratitude for the support we had received. As the evening wore on, I found myself standing alone on the porch, looking out over the town that had become our sanctuary. Lisa joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "Look at how far we've come," she said, her voice filled with wonder. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "Yeah, we've been through a lot, but we've made it." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "And we'll keep making it no matter what." As we stood there, surrounded by the warmth of our home and the love of our friends, I realized that the future held many more challenges. But with Lisa by my side, I knew we could face anything. "Here's to us," I said, raising an imaginary glass. Lisa smiled, her eyes shining with love. "To us." And with that, we sealed our commitment with a kiss, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that as long as we had each other, we had everything we needed. The months rolled on, and Lisa and I settled into a rhythm. Managing her condition became second nature, and we grew closer as we navigated the challenges together. Our new town felt more like home every day, and our circle of friends grew. One crisp autumn day, we were having lunch at our favorite cafe when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it and froze. It was from Jenna. "I need to talk to you, please. It's important." I showed Lisa the message, her eyes widening in surprise. "Do you think it's serious?" "I'm not sure," I replied, feeling a mix of emotions. "But I think I need to hear her out, just to see what she wants." Lisa nodded, her support unwavering. "I understand. Do you want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "No, I think I need to do this alone, but thank you." Later that afternoon, I met Jenna at a small park near our old neighborhood. She looked different, more subdued, and there was a heaviness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't have much of a choice," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "What do you want, Jenna?" She took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. I know I hurt you deeply, and I've come to realize just how much damage I caused." I crossed my arms, waiting for her to continue. "I'm in therapy now," she said, her voice trembling, "trying to understand my actions and make amends where I can. I know I can't change the past, but I wanted to apologize. Truly, I'm so sorry for everything." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and for a moment my anger softened. "I appreciate your apology, Jenna, but it doesn't change what happened." "I know," she said, nodding, "but I needed to say it. I needed to face what I did and try to find some way to move forward." We stood in silence for a few moments, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. Finally, Jenna spoke again. "I heard about you and Lisa. I'm glad you found happiness. You deserve it." "Thank you," I said, feeling a pang of sadness for what could have been. "I hope you find peace too." With that, we parted ways. As I walked back to my car, I felt a strange sense of closure. Jenna's apology didn't erase the pain, but it did help me let go of some of the lingering bitterness. When I got home, Lisa was waiting for me, a concerned look on her face. "How did it go?" I sat down beside her, taking her hand. It was intense, but I think it was necessary. She apologized, and it felt genuine. "I think it's time to finally let go of the past." Lisa smiled, her eyes filled with love. "I'm proud of you." As we sat there, I realized how much we had both grown. Our love had been tested and strengthened, and now we were ready for whatever came next. The following week, we received an unexpected invitation. It was from Mark. He wanted to meet, to talk. Lisa and I debated whether to go, but ultimately we decided it was time to close that chapter as well. We met Mark at a quiet cafe, the tension palpable. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice strained. "I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to apologize. For everything." Lisa and I exchanged a glance before I spoke. "We've both moved on, Mark, but I think we all need closure." He nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I've lost so much because of my actions. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I did what I did. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, truly." Lisa reached across the table, placing a hand on his. "We appreciate your apology, Mark. We found happiness together, and we hope you can find peace, too." There was a moment of silence as we all processed the weight of the conversation. Finally, Mark spoke again. "Thank you. I hope you both have a wonderful life." We left the cafe, a sense of finality settling over us. It wasn't about forgiveness as much as it was about moving forward and not letting the past control our future. Back at home, Lisa and I sat on the porch, our hands intertwined. "Do you feel better?" she asked. "I do," I said, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in a long time. "It's like a weight has been lifted." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad. We've come so far, and I can't wait to see where we go next." As we watched the sun set over our town, I felt a deep sense of peace. The past had been painful, but it had also brought us together and made us stronger. And now, with the shadows of our history finally laid to rest, we were ready to face the future, together. With the past finally behind us, Lisa and I focused on building our future together. The days felt brighter, and our relationship stronger than ever. We continued to navigate Lisa's health condition, finding a balance that worked for both of us. One evening, as we sat on the porch, enjoying a warm summer breeze, Lisa turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about starting a family?" The question took me by surprise, but I realized I had been thinking about it too. "I do," I said, squeezing her hand. "I think we'd make great parents." She smiled, a hopeful glimmer in her eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about it. I know it won't be easy with my condition, but I'd like to try." My heart swelled with love for her. "Then let's do it. We'll face whatever challenges come our way, just like we always have." We started planning, visiting doctors to discuss our options and preparing ourselves for the journey ahead. It was exciting and nerve-wracking, but we were ready to take the next step. A few months later, we received the news we had been hoping for. Lisa was pregnant. The joy and anticipation were overwhelming. We celebrated with our friends and family, grateful for the support and love that surrounded us. As the months passed, we prepared for the arrival of our little one. We decorated the nursery, attended prenatal classes, and read every parenting book we could find. It was a time of bonding and growth, both for us as a couple and as individuals. One crisp autumn morning, Lisa went into labor. The experience was intense and exhausting, but also filled with moments of profound connection and love. When our baby girl Emma was finally born, we were overcome with emotion. Holding Emma for the first time, I felt a rush of love and protectiveness like never before. Lisa, exhausted but radiant, looked at our daughter with tears of joy streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We really did it." I leaned in and kissed her forehead, my heart full. "Yes, we did. And she's perfect." Bringing Emma home was a beautiful chaos. Sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the constant worry of new parents filled our days. But through it all, our love for each other and for our daughter grew stronger. Our friends and family visited often, showering Emma with love and affection. One evening, as we sat in the living room with Emma sleeping peacefully in her crib, Lisa turned to me with a contented smile. "Remember when we thought our world was falling apart?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. I nodded, thinking back to those dark days. "Yeah, I do. It feels like a lifetime ago." She took my hand, her grip warm and reassuring. "Look at us now. We've built something beautiful out of the ashes." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "We have, and I wouldn't change a thing." As the years went by, our love continued to grow. We faced challenges, as all couples do, but we faced them together, always stronger for it. Emma brought immeasurable joy into our lives, her laughter and curiosity a constant reminder of the beauty in the world. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Emma play in the yard, Lisa leaned her head on my shoulder. "I love our life," she said softly. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a profound sense of contentment. "I do too, and I love you more than words can say." We sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the sun set over our home. The journey that had brought us here had been filled with pain and heartache, But it had also led to a love that was deeper and more meaningful than we could have ever imagined. "Here's to the future," I said, raising an imaginary glass. Lisa smiled, her eyes shining with love. "To the future." And with that, we sealed our commitment with a kiss, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that as long as we had each other, we had everything we needed. The future was bright and we were ready to embrace it together, as a family.